The oak door didn't just close, it detonated against the frame, a wooden thunderclap that severed Nomsa's life in two. She stood on the dark driveway, her bare feet instantly numbing against the flooded asphalt of the Georgia suburbs. The rain was a vertical ocean, cold enough to steal the breath from her lungs and turn her skin into a map of goosebumps. Inside the house she had scrubbed, painted, and filled with the scent of South African Cape Malay curry, Marcus stood behind the glass. He wasn't crying. He wasn't shouting. He was simply watching her with a clinical, detached coldness that was more terrifying than any scream. Beside him, a woman Nomsa had never seen, a woman with sharp features and a silk robe that Nomsa had bought for her own anniversary, was leaning against the marble kitchen island, sipping from a crystal glass. "Marcus, please." Nomsa's voice was swallowed by a crack of lightning that turned the world white for a split second. She hammered on the door, her knuckles already bleeding, the copper tang of blood mixing with the rain. "It's 2 a.m. I'm 8 months pregnant, Marcus. Look at me. You can't do this to your own child." Marcus leaned toward the glass, his face illuminated by the dim foyer light. His voice was muffled by the thick, hurricane-grade glass, but the words cut through the storm like a blade. "I'm not the villain here, Nomsa. I gave you 3 years. I gave you a visa. I gave you a life that a girl from a township could only dream of. But you stayed stagnant while I climbed. You're a weight, Nomsa. A heavy, South African weight, and if I don't cut you loose now, I'll never reach the partner circle. This isn't about hate, it's about the evolution of my career. You should have been faster. You should have been more. Now, get off my property before I call the police for trespassing." He turned the deadbolt. The light in the foyer died, plunging the porch into a suffocating darkness. "Before we witness the moment the shadows of the street turn into a woman's shield, I have to ask you, have you ever been discarded by someone you built a foundation for? Have you ever had your sacrifices treated like a burden? We tell these stories because no one should have to bleed in the dark. If you believe that honor matters more than a partner's promotion, hit that subscribe button right now. Join our archive of survivors. Comment "I am the foundation" below to let the algorithm know that your spirit cannot be evicted. We are just getting started. Nomsa slumped against the wet bricks, her hands cradling the heavy, low weight of her belly. The baby kicked, a sharp, frantic protest against the cold. Her suitcase, thrown out minutes earlier, lay disemboweled in a puddle, her hand-knitted baby blankets, the ones she had spent 6 months making while Marcus worked late, soaking up the grime of the driveway. She began to crawl toward the street, her mind a static hum of terror. She had no phone, Marcus had snatched it during the argument. She had no keys. She had nothing but the rain. Then, the world changed. The rain didn't stop, but the sound of it did. A low, mechanical purr cut through the thunder, followed by the blinding sweep of white LED headlights. A convoy of 3 blacked-out SUVs glided into the cul-de-sac like a fleet of silent warships. They didn't slow down, they swerved, boxing in Marcus's driveway with the surgical precision of a tactical unit. 6 men in identical charcoal suits stepped out. They didn't run, they moved with a terrifying, rhythmic grace, unfurling massive black umbrellas that created a dry canopy over the asphalt. One man, younger than the rest, stepped from the rear of the middle vehicle. His coat was charcoal cashmere, his shoes were bespoke Japanese leather, and his eyes were the color of a winter sea, deep, cold, and impossibly ancient. This was Minho, the man the international press called the Ghost of Seoul, the youngest billionaire in the tech world and the heir to a shipping empire that controlled the pulse of the Pacific. Minho stopped 3 feet from Nomsa. He didn't look at the house. He didn't look at the guards. He looked at the tiny, blue-knitted baby cap floating in a puddle of muddy water. He knelt, his expensive trousers soaking in the grime, and picked it up with 2 fingers. "Is this yours?" Minho's voice was a deep, resonant calm that acted like an anchor in the wind. Nomsa looked up, her vision blurring. He said I was a weight. He said I didn't fit the future." Minho's jaw tightened, the only sign of the tectonic rage brewing inside him. He stood up, lifted Nomsa with an effortless, protective strength, and turned to his head of security. Get the medical team on the satellite link. Now. And find out who owns the deed to this house. Sir, the merger meeting in New York starts in 3 hours, the guard cautioned. Burn the meeting, Minho said, his gaze fixed on the darkened window where Marcus was now peering through the blinds. I've spent my life building a multinational empire. Tonight, I'm reminded that an empire is a hollow shell if it cannot protect a mother in a storm. Fetch her things. Every scrap of clothing. If a single thread is left in the mud, you're all fired. Inside the SUV, the air was warm and smelled of expensive sandalwood and aged paper. Nomsa was wrapped in a heated cashmere blanket, a thermos of ginger tea pressed into her shaking hands. Minho sat opposite her, his face a stoic mask as he watched the digital readout of her vitals from a sensor a medic had placed on her wrist. Why? Nomsa whispered, her voice returning as the warmth hit her lungs. You are a man of power. I am a woman with nothing. Minho looked at the tiny blue cap in his hand. 10 years ago, my sister stood exactly where you are. My father, a man obsessed with legacy and purity, threw her out because she chose a life he didn't approve of. She died in a storm just like this one because I was too young to stop him. I spent a decade becoming the man who could have saved her. I'm not helping a stranger, Nomsa. I'm correcting a debt the universe owes my bloodline. And as for you having nothing, we will see about that by sunrise. The escalation was not a slow burn, it was an explosion. While Nomsa slept in a guest wing that was larger than Marcus's entire house, the ghost of Seoul was on the phone. By 4 a.m., Marcus's private bank accounts he had used to hide his mistress's apartment and his consulting fees, were flagged by 3 different international agencies. By 7 a.m., the law firm where Marcus was a senior associate received a letter of intent. A mystery buyer had acquired 51% of their holding company. Marcus woke up at 8 a.m. to a knock on the door. He expected the mail. He found a demolition crew and a man in a charcoal suit holding an eviction notice. There's a mistake, Marcus stammered, his mistress standing behind him in her robe. I own this house. You did, the man said. But your mortgage was held by a subsidiary that was sold at 2 a.m. The new owner has decided to convert this property into a construction site. You have 20 minutes to vacate. Or we start the bulldozers with you inside. Nomsa watched the live feed from the penthouse. She felt a flicker of the woman she used to be, the woman who would have felt sorry for him. He's going to be homeless, she said softly. Minho didn't turn from the window. He chose the storm, Nomsa. I am just making sure he experiences it fully. But you need to know the truth. Marcus didn't throw you out because he was climbing. He threw you out because he found out about the Johannesburg Trust. Nomsa's heart stopped. The what? Your father wasn't a miner, Nomsa. He was the chief engineer for a project that discovered the largest rare earth mineral deposit in the southern hemisphere. When he died, he didn't leave you nothing. He left you a 15% stake in a company that my father has been trying to destroy for years. Marcus was approached 6 months ago. He was offered $5 million to make sure you signed a divorce settlement that signed away your mineral rights. When you got pregnant, you became too expensive to keep around. He didn't discard a weight, Nomsa. He discarded a queen because he was too small to sit on the throne. The twist, however, was a double-edged sword. As Marcus sat on the curb of his former home, his designer suits in a heap beside him, he looked up at the black SUV that pulled to the curb. He didn't look angry, he looked terrified. Nomsa! Marcus screamed as the window rolled down. You have to listen. I did it to keep you alive. The people Minho works for, they were the ones who killed your father. I threw you out so you would be found by the press. If you stayed with me, they were going to kill the baby to end the lineage. Nomsa looked at Minho. The man who had saved her. The man whose father had been her father's rival. The man who was now holding her hand. Is he lying? She whispered. Minho's grip tightened. He looked at the head of security, who was slowly reaching for his holster. The storm is only beginning, Nomsa. My father didn't send me here to save you. He sent me to find the girl with the gold. But he forgot one thing. Minho pulled a second sidearm and pointed it directly at his own head of security. I don't work for my father anymore. The screen fades to black as a single gunshot echoes through the penthouse. This is only the beginning of the Dlamini legacy. If you need to know who survived that room, if you need to see Nomsa claim her throne in Johannesburg, and if you want to see the downfall of the men who treat women like mineral rights, you know what to do. Subscribe. The archive is waiting. The silence in the penthouse after that single gunshot was more deafening than the Georgia storm. Minho didn't blink. His head of security, a man who had served his father for 20 years, slumped against the marble doorframe, a crimson stain spreading across his charcoal lapel. The man hadn't even drawn his weapon, he had been reached by the ghost of Seoul first. Nomsa, don't look at him, Minho commanded, his voice dropping into a register of cold, vibrating authority. He stepped over the body and grabbed a sleek silver briefcase from the side table. My father didn't send a convoy to save you. He sent a cleanup crew to ensure that the heir to the Johannesburg Trust, and the child she carries, never made it to the sunrise. I hijacked the mission. But we have exactly 6 minutes before the secondary team realizes the GPS on this car hasn't moved. Nomsa felt the world tilting. Her husband was a mercenary. Her savior was a rogue prince. And her father, the man she thought had died in a dark hole in the earth, was the key to a global mineral war. You killed him, she whispered, staring at the guard. You killed your own man for me? I killed a traitor who was about to put a silenced rounds through your heart, Minho snapped, grabbing her hand. His grip was electric, desperate. In my world, Nomsa, there is no good or bad. There is only who is holding the gun and who is holding the gold. Right now, you are holding the gold, and I am holding the gun. We move. Now. If you're sitting on the edge of your seat, wondering if any of us are ever truly safe from the people we trust, hit that like button. We are diving into the belly of the beast. If you want to see a woman stop being a pawn and start being the queen, you need to be subscribed. Because what happens in this elevator is going to change the way you look at true love forever. Comment the truth if you can handle what's coming next. They didn't take the main elevator. Minho pushed a hidden panel behind a floor-to-ceiling mirror, revealing a service lift that smelled of industrial grease and old secrets. As the car plummeted toward the basement, the digital display didn't show floor numbers. It showed a countdown. Marcus, Nomsa gasped, her breath coming in ragged hitches as the baby kicked, hard, against her ribs. He said he threw me out to save me. Was he lying? Minho looked at the small, circular mirror in the elevator corner, checking his reflection for blood. Marcus is a man of many justifications. He's a middle manager who got caught in a game of kings. He probably does believe he was saving you. It's easier for a coward to sleep at night if he calls his betrayal a sacrifice. He threw you into the rain because he was paid to. If he tipped me off, it was only as an insurance policy in case my father's rivals won. He was playing both sides, Nomsa. He didn't save you. He gambled on you. The lift hit the basement with a jarring thud. The doors opened to a fleet of nondescript gray sedans, no more luxury SUVs, no more convoys. Get in, Minho ordered. As they sped out of the parking garage, dodging the main exits, Nomsa saw Marcus on the sidewalk through the tinted glass. He was being loaded into a white van by men with no insignias. He looked broken. He looked like the weight he had claimed she was. Where are they taking him? She asked. To a place where explanations don't matter, Minho said, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. But we have a bigger problem. Your father didn't just leave you a trust fund, Nomsa. He left you the encryption key to the South African national grid. The mineral deposit isn't just gold. It's a specialized isotope used in next-generation satellite weaponry. My father wants it to monopolize the tech industry. Your father's rivals want it to bankrupt my family. And you? You just wanted a nursery and a husband who loved you. Nomsa sat back, the cashmere blanket falling from her shoulders. She looked at her reflection in the dark window, a pregnant woman, soaked, exhausted, and suddenly the most dangerous person on the planet. What happens if I refuse? She asked. What if I just want to go home to Soweto? Minho turned the car onto a secluded dirt road leading toward a private airstrip. He slowed down, finally looking at her with a vulnerability that broke through his ghost persona. If you go back to Soweto without the protection of an empire, you'll be dead before you leave the airport. But if you come with me to Seoul, if you help me dismantle my father's board of directors, I will give you the one thing Marcus never could. And what's that? A future where no one ever dares to close a door on you again. The escalation from here moved with the speed of a fever dream. Within 48 hours, Nomsa wasn't in Georgia, she was in a fortress-like villa overlooking the Sea of Japan. The medical team was replaced by a private obstetrician who spoke 3 languages and carried a sidearm. Minho was a whirlwind of activity. He was no longer a charming young man, he was a kingpin in the middle of a hostile takeover. He stayed up for 40 hours straight, his face illuminated by the blue light of 6 different monitors, moving billions of dollars across the globe like chess pieces. But on the 3rd night, a knock came to Nomsa's door. It wasn't Minho. It was the mistress, the woman Marcus had been with in the kitchen. She wasn't wearing a silk robe now. She was in a tactical vest, her eyes cold and professional. Don't scream, Nomsa, the woman said, her voice a sharp, British clip. I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Sarah. I'm an undercover operative for the South African State Security Agency. I wasn't Marcus's lover. I was his handler. Nomsa stood up, her hand instinctively going to her belly. His handler? Then you know everything. You knew he was going to throw me out. I suggested it, Sarah said, stepping into the room and closing the door softly. It was the only way to get Minho to mobilize. We knew about his sister. We knew he had a soft spot for women abandoned in the rain. We used your trauma to bait the most powerful man in Asia into becoming your personal bodyguard. Nomsa felt a cold, hollow sensation in her chest. Every moment of her life for the last 3 years had been a scripted play. Her marriage. Her pregnancy. The storm. Even the ghost of Seoul saving her. So, I'm just bait? Nomsa whispered. No, Sarah said, leaning in. You're the hunter. Minho thinks he's saving you to spite his father. My agency thinks they're using you to secure the isotopes. But they all forgot one thing. They forgot that your mother, Zadwa, wasn't just a nurse. She was the one who wrote the encryption key. And she didn't put it in a bank. She put it in the one place no man would ever think to look. Sarah pointed to the tiny, blue-knitted baby cap that Minho had picked up from the puddle. The pattern of the stitches, Sarah whispered. It's a binary code. Your mother spent months knitting that while she was dying of cancer. She knew Marcus was a spy. She knew the storm was coming. She gave you the key before she ever left this earth. Nomsa picked up the cap, her fingers tracing the rough wool. The weight she carried wasn't her child, and it wasn't her past. It was the future of the world, hidden in a piece of clothing she had almost left in the mud. The final twist arrived with the sunrise. Minho entered the room, his face pale. The convoy is here. My father has landed. He wants to negotiate for the key. Nomsa looked at Sarah, then at Minho. She realized that everyone in this room wanted something from her. Her husband wanted her money. Minho wanted his redemption. Sarah wanted her isotopes. Nomsa walked to the balcony, the blue cap clutched in her hand. She looked down at the courtyard where dozens of black cars were idling, a sea of men in suits waiting for a girl from the township to give them the world. You all think you know who I am, Nomsa said, her voice echoing over the sea. You think I'm a victim you saved. You think I'm bait you set. You think I'm a weight you can move. She pulled a lighter from her pocket, one she had taken from Minho's desk. The encryption key dies with the wool, Nomsa said, holding the flame to the blue cap. Nomsa, stop. Minho shouted, reaching for her. No, she said, her eyes burning with a fire that had been suppressed for 3 years. If you want the gold, you'll have to build a world where my daughter can grow up without being a transaction. Until then, the world stays in the dark. She dropped the burning cap over the balcony. As it fell, a streak of fire against the morning sky, the Kingpin and the mercenary and the agent all watched their power turn to ash. But as the cap hit the ground, Nomsa felt a sharp, definitive pain. Minho, she gasped, gripping the railing. The baby, it's time. The screen cuts to black. The sound of a newborn's first cry fills the silence, followed by a voice that shouldn't be there. A voice from the past. She has her grandmother's eyes, the voice whispers. It's Marcus. And he's holding a gun to the doctor's head. The Dlamini War has only just begun. Subscribe to see how Nomsa survives the ultimate betrayal, from within the delivery room. The sterile white of the delivery room was no longer a sanctuary. It was a kill box. Nomsa lay on the narrow bed, her body convulsing with the final, agonizing push of labor, but her eyes were locked on the reflection in the surgical steel of the instrument tray. Marcus was there. He wasn't the broken man on the curb anymore. He was wearing a lab coat, his face obscured by a surgical mask, but those eyes, the eyes that had looked at her with such feigned love for 3 years, were cold and bright with a frantic, desperate triumph. He held a suppressed pistol to the temple of the lead obstetrician. The nurses stood frozen, their hands raised, the monitors beeping a rhythmic, frantic warning as Nomsa's heart rate spiked. Push, Nomsa, Marcus whispered, his voice a jagged edge of madness. Push out the billion-dollar heir. I didn't spend 3 years playing the doting husband to lose it all to a ghost in a cashmere coat. Nomsa gasped, her fingers digging into the side rails. You were in the van. Minho said they took you. Minho is a romantic, Nomsa. That's his weakness, Marcus sneered, shoving the doctor harder. He thought his father's rivals captured me. He didn't realize I am the rivals. I'm the one who brokered the deal between the Johannesburg Trust and the Soul Board. Now, give me the child. The child is the biological key to the vault. The DNA is the final encryption. If your heart is racing as fast as Nomsa's right now, you need to understand something. This isn't just a story about a bad marriage. This is a story about the lengths a predator will go to when they think they own your very blood. If you believe that a mother's instinct is more powerful than a traitor's greed, hit that like button. We are entering the 8,000-word climax of the Dlamini legacy. Subscribe, because the next 60 seconds will determine who inherits the world and who inherits a grave. Comment protect her to stand with Nomsa in this final hour. A massive explosion rocked the villa. The glass in the observation gallery shattered, raining diamonds of light onto the floor. Minho crashed through the debris, his charcoal suit torn, a smear of soot across his high cheekbones. He didn't have a gun. He had something much more dangerous, a detonator. Let the doctor go, Marcus, Minho commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. The entire wing is rigged. If your finger twitches, we all go up. The gold, the isotopes, the baby, and your $5 million dream. It all turns to dust. Marcus laughed, a high, unstable sound. You won't do it, Minho. You're obsessed with correcting the debt. You want to save her because you couldn't save your sister. You're too weak to be a kingpin. I'm not a kingpin today, Minho said, stepping closer, his eyes fixed on Nomsa. I'm a man who just realized that the woman on that bed is worth more than the empire I spent 10 years building. Take the money, Marcus. Take the offshore accounts I set up for you. Just walk away. Nomsa screamed, a primal, guttural sound that tore through the tension of the room. The baby was coming. The legacy was arriving. The DNA. Marcus yelled, reaching for the newborn as the doctor pulled the child into the light. Give him to me. In that split second, Nomsa didn't wait for Minho. She didn't wait for the guards. She reached out with a strength born of 14 months of double shifts, 3 years of endurance, and a lifetime of Soweto resilience. She grabbed the heavy metal tray of surgical instruments and swung it with everything she had. The tray caught Marcus across the throat. He gagged, his aim wavering. Minho moved like lightning. He didn't use the detonator. He used a glass shard from the floor, driving it into Marcus's shoulder. The gun clattered to the floor. The nurses scrambled. But as the chaos unfolded, a second shadow appeared in the doorway. It was the ghost of Sol's father, the elder Mr. O. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding a briefcase. He looked at the crying infant, then at Nomsa, then at his bleeding son. "Enough," the elder said. His voice was like grinding stones. "The isotopes are gone. The cap burned. But the girl is something I didn't expect." He walked toward Nomsa, ignoring the guns and the blood. He looked at the baby, then back at her. "You burned the key to a billion-dollar empire to prove a point. My son ruined his reputation to protect you. And your husband ruined his soul to own you." The elder opened the briefcase. It wasn't filled with money. It was filled with old, yellowed letters. "Your mother, Zadwa, didn't just write a code," the elder whispered. "She wrote to me. 30 years ago. She told me that if I ever tried to claim what was hers, she would raise a daughter who would burn my world down. She kept her promise." The final escalation hit like a tidal wave. The elder turned to Minho. "Take her. Take the child. Go to South Africa. The board is dismantled. Marcus is a ghost. But remember this, Nomsa Dlamini, the world will come for that child one day. Not for the gold, but for the fire you put in her blood." Nomsa sat on the deck of a private ship. A week later, the coast of Cape Town appearing on the horizon like a dream made of salt and sun. The baby, a girl named Zadwa, slept in her arms. Minho stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Is it over?" she asked. "For now," Minho said. "But your husband? Marcus? He disappeared from the infirmary 3 days ago. He left a note in your jewelry box." Nomsa opened her hand. And it was the gold filigree ring she thought was lost forever. Wrapped around it was a scrap of paper with a single sentence written in Marcus's handwriting. "I never wanted the money, Nomsa. I wanted you to hate me enough to survive the people who were coming for you. Check the ring setting." Nomsa turned the ring over. Hidden inside the band, etched in microscopic letters, was the real encryption key. The blue cap had been a decoy. The burning had been a distraction. Marcus had been the villain because he knew it was the only way Nomsa would ever trust Minho enough to get to safety. She looked out at the ocean, the weight of the world's power literally wrapped around her finger. "Minho," she said, her voice steady. "We aren't going to Johannesburg." "Where are we going?" Nomsa looked at the ring, then at her daughter. "We're going to the one place they'll never look. We're going back to the dry cleaning shop in Mapogu. I have some suits that need pressing." The screen fades to a deep, resonant black. A final text appears, "The archive never forgets a debt." Would you like to see the season finale? Subscribe now to unlock the truth about the Mapogu underground. The real Kingpin is finally revealed. The air in Mapogu was thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts and the metallic tang of approaching snow. It had been 6 months since the explosion in Georgia, 6 months since the world thought Nomsa Dlamini had vanished into the ether of the South African underground. But here she was, standing in front of the same fogged-up window of the dry cleaning shop where her journey had begun. She wasn't wearing silk now. She was back in her heavy denim apron, a sleeping Zadwa strapped to her chest in a traditional colorful wrap. Minho stood at the back of the shop, his charcoal suits replaced by a simple black turtleneck. He was feeding a heavy wool coat into the steam press, his movements precise, his billionaire hands learning the rhythm of honest labor. To the world, he was dead, lost in a tragic aviation accident over the Pacific. To Nomsa, he was the only man who had ever stayed to help her clean up the mess. The steam is too high on the left valve, Minho, Nomsa said, her voice steady, possessing a new, ironclad authority. Minho looked up, a rare, genuine smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I'm learning, Nomsa. It's harder to press a suit than it is to hostile takeover a tech firm. Because a suit has to hold its shape under pressure, she replied. Just like us. If you've ever had to go back to your roots to find your strength, if you've ever realized that the simplest life is often the best protected one, drop a roots in the comments. We are entering the final, high-stakes chapter of the Mapogu Underground. If you want to see how a dry cleaning shop becomes the headquarters for a global revolution, you need to be subscribed. The bell is your ticket to the finale. The bell above the door groaned, the same low, tired sound it always made. Nomsa didn't look up. She knew the gait of the person entering. It wasn't the light, hurried step of a customer. It was the heavy, rhythmic tread of someone who carried the weight of a city. Mr. Park walked in. He wasn't wearing his tea-colored cardigan today. He was wearing a formal black overcoat, and his eyes were shadowed by a brimmed hat. He placed a small, wooden box on the glass counter. The suits are finished, Nomsa, Mr. Park said. But the history is still catching up. Nomsa walked to the counter, her hand resting protectively over the baby's head. What's in the box, Mr. Park? I told you, I'm done with the gold. I'm done with the isotopes. This isn't gold, Mr. Park said, sliding the box toward her. It's a ledger. Your husband, Marcus, he didn't just disappear. He's been busy. He's been buying up the debt of every small business on this street. Including this shop. Nomsa felt a cold spike of adrenaline. Why? He has the money. He has the key on the ring. Why come back here? Because he realized the key on the ring is only half the code, Mr. Park whispered, leaning in so close Nomsa could smell the barley tea on his breath. The other half isn't written in binary or etched in gold. It's a biometric lock. It requires the heartbeat of the billionaire. He's not here for the shop, Nomsa. He's here for the girl. Minho moved from the steam press, his hand sliding toward the pocket of his apron where a compact Glock was hidden. He won't get within a mile of her. He's already within 10 feet, a voice rasped from the shadows of the back alley door. Marcus stepped out from behind a rack of plastic-covered wedding dresses. He looked like a ghost, thin, scarred, his arm still in a sling from the glass shard Minho had buried in him. But he was holding a remote detonator, and his thumb was hovering over the red light. I told you, Nomsa, Marcus said, his voice trembling with a terrifying mixture of love and greed. I'm the only one who truly understands what you are. You're not a dry cleaner. You're a god. And I'm the only one who can help you rule. You threw me out in a storm, Marcus, Nomsa said, her voice dropping into a register so cold it seemed to freeze the steam in the air. You watched me crawl in the mud with your child in my belly. I gave you to the Kingpin. Marcus screamed. I gave you the best protection in the world because I knew I couldn't keep you safe myself. I played the villain so you could become the queen. Don't you see? Every tear you cried was a payment into our future. This is the moment of truth. Is Marcus a misunderstood hero or the ultimate manipulator? The comments are blowing up, tell us what you think. If you think Nomsa should pull the trigger, like this video. If you think Marcus deserves a second chance, tell us why. But stay tuned, because the final 1,000 words of this 8,000-word epic are about to rewrite everything you know about the Afro-Korean archive. Nomsa looked at Minho. Then she looked at Mr. Park. Finally, she looked at Marcus. She realized that for years, men had been fighting over her like she was a piece of territory. They had scripted her life, her pain, and her joy. She reached down and unstrapped the baby, handing the sleeping Zadwa to Minho. Minho, take her to the back, she said. Nomsa, no. Take her to the back, she repeated, her voice leaving no room for argument. When the door clicked shut, Nomsa turned to Marcus. She walked toward him, ignoring the detonator, ignoring the gun Mr. Park had pulled from under the counter. She stopped inches from his face. You want the heartbeat, Marcus? You want the final code? She took his hand, the hand that was holding the detonator, and pressed it against her own chest, right over her heart. Feel that? She whispered. That's the rhythm of the woman you broke. That's the rhythm of the mother who survived you. You think you're part of this legacy? You think you're the architect of my life? Nomsa leaned in, her eyes burning with a fierce, township fire. The second half of the code isn't my heartbeat, Marcus. My mother knew you'd think that. She knew you'd come for the blood. Nomsa reached into her apron and pulled out a small, jagged piece of stone, a raw diamond from the Johannesburg mine, unpolished and sharp. The code is the pressure, she said. She slammed the stone into the counter's sensors. The shop's lights didn't flicker, they turned a deep, blood red. The monitors in the back room began to scream. I just triggered the self-destruct on the national grid, Nomsa said, her voice hauntingly calm. If the isotopes are moved, if the gold is touched, if my daughter is ever threatened again, the entire mineral deposit collapses into the earth. No one gets the gold. No one gets the power. The Dlamini legacy ends tonight, and we all go back to being nothing. Marcus stared at her, the detonator slipping from his fingers. You'd destroy it all? Billions of dollars? Your daughter's inheritance? My daughter doesn't need gold to be a queen, Nomsa said. She just needs to know that her mother was never a weight. Mr. Park stepped forward, a look of profound respect on his face. He took off his hat and bowed low, not to the billionaire, not to the spy, but to the dry cleaner from Soweto. The ghost of Seoul has found his master, Mr. Park whispered. The screen fades to a soft, snowy white. The sound of the shop's bell rings one last time. But as the credits begin to roll, a final image appears on the screen. It's a CCTV feed from an airport in Switzerland. A woman who looks exactly like Nomsa, but with a scar across her brow, is walking through security. She's carrying a briefcase with the O family crest. She turns to the camera and winks. The truth is never as simple as the story. Subscribe for Season 2, The Twins' Revenge. The real Nomsa is still in the storm.